All right, guys, I want to talk to you about something called Kaizen. And that is a Japanese term that essentially means continuous improvement, which is sort of Lexus's mantra, and it has been for a long time. But I really do think it applies to this 2026 Lexus RZ to perfection. Yes, I said RZ because don't forget, you are watching AutoTrader Canada, and we speak good old-fashioned Canadian English, and that means it's Z, not Z. Anyways, this thing came out a few years ago, and to be honest with you, it was a little bit underwhelming, and it felt like a compliance vehicle. But with the updates for this 2026 model year, it feels vastly improved, and you can really see and feel that Kaizen mantra come to life in this EV. Now, first things first, you might notice what's in my hand. It is not a steering wheel, it's a steering yoke, and that's because this has a steer-by-wire system, which it also had back in 2023 when the RZ came out. Now, no, this is not yet destined for North America, but it's still important to try it out because this represents the future, and Lexus said it's basically preparing itself for what it anticipates with autonomous technology, that you will be able to deploy a steering yoke and then put it away. So a steer-by-wire system makes a lot of sense in a vehicle that can do both. Apparently, it's under regulatory approval as we speak, but that process is still undergoing. It's very long, it's very arduous, and that's why we still don't have this steer-by-wire system in North America, but it is improved. I drove it a few years ago, and it really felt a little bit twitchy. It only had 150 degrees of lock-to-lock steering input. Now it's 200 degrees, and it helps so much. You don't feel that it's quite as twitchy, that it reacts too suddenly to inputs, especially at low speeds. This does feel a lot more refined. It's also kind of cool. It gives you great visibility of the instrument display as well as the road ahead because you don't have the rim of the steering wheel, and quite honestly, very easy to adjust to. It doesn't feel like this enormous leap, like reinventing the wheel literally and figuratively. I really do like it, and I look forward to this system making it to North America because Lexus has worked really hard on this. Apparently, it's been in development for about a decade now, and typical Lexus and Toyota, there's a lot of redundancies here. A lot of safety tech has gone into this to make sure that you're not going to run into any issues with it. And in my experience, both here now as well as last time I drove with it, very good. But like I said, the improvements are noticeable. Now, just like the Toyota BZ and the Subaru Solterra, which technically this RZ does share a platform with, there are some improvements this year to the EV basics, the essentials. So the motors, they are new, and so is the battery. It used to have a 71.4 kilowatt hour battery, and now it is 77 kilowatt hours. It does give it more range, and that is very much something that this EV needed. Now, to speak about this one in particular, it is a version that we are not getting in North America, but we're getting a very similar one. So we're getting the RZ 450e, and this is an RZ 500e, but we're really splitting hairs here because it's the same dual motor setup. Output is virtually the same, which is improved a little bit this year. There's 313 net horsepower between the two electric motors, which might not seem like much, but don't forget, this is an EV. So output, regardless, is not the same as it is with an internal combustion engine. This thing has all kinds of electrified torque, and when you get your foot down, it really does want to get up and go very smoothly. This does feel like an electric Lexus, and I'm telling you right now, it does not feel related to the Solterra or the BZ at all. This thing is just smoother, it's more refined, the ride quality is fantastic, and it was before, but it does feel better. The tweaks to the suspension have made it a better vehicle. Now, with that bigger battery, you do get more range, 420 kilometers in the 450e. There is a new 350e, a front-wheel drive version coming to Canada that should be good for 486 kilometers. The nice thing is, it's not going to be a stripped down kind of base model. So you're still getting all kinds of goodies like heated and ventilated seats, a whole bunch of safety tech. It feels like a proper premium vehicle. But with that front wheel drive instead of all-wheel drive, you are sacrificing traction in the name of range and efficiency. Now, some other stuff to talk about. There is a NACS port, a Tesla-style charging port on North American models, this one being a European version. Of course, it doesn't have a NACS port because that is the North American charging system. There's also a bigger onboard charger. There's an 11 kilowatt unit this time around instead of the 7 before, and that means when you're plugged into a level 2 charger, it will charge faster. DC fast charging still capped at 150 kilowatts, and that has been done to preserve the life of the battery. Lexus, Toyota, and Subaru, they anticipate 10 years, 10% degradation. So capping that maximum speed, that is one way to sort of future-proof the battery that is underneath this thing. And I do think it's a good strategy because you can still do the 10 to 80% jump in about half an hour. Of course, that is in ideal conditions, but this does have battery preconditioning. So if you run that for about 30 minutes before you hook up to a DC fast charger, that's how you're going to get close to those optimal conditions. Now, one major disappointment for me, yes, there is adjustable regenerative braking. These little tiny paddles here on this steering yoke or the steering wheel on our models that we get at home. You can adjust the regen, and there are 3 different settings that you can adjust, different aggressions, no full one pedal driving, which bums me out. I really do like that. I know a lot of EV drivers out there like it too. It kind of gamifies the experience, maximizes that efficiency. So I would like to see that, but quite honestly, this thing is doing just fine out here. This very winding route we're on, lots of hill climbs, and we're still averaging about 19.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So very efficient considering what we've got going on here. I will also say no pricing as of yet. Now, according to Lexus Canada, the plan is to keep it competitive with the previous version, as well as some other entries on the market. Note that the 450e for 2025, it started at around $60,000 before freight and tax. That means hopefully that 350e that we're getting, the front wheel drive version, is going to bring that price down even lower. The last thing we should talk about, there is another version at the top of the lineup, the 550e F Sport, which I've not yet driven, but it's supposed to be a more performance-oriented version of the RZ, right down to the fact that it has a manual mode that allows you to kind of shift through gears, simulated, of course, like a conventional powertrain as opposed to an electric one. All right, guys, I'm in the 550e F Sport, and there are 2 very important numbers for you to remember. 408, that is how much horsepower this version makes, and 366, that is the range in kilometers. A little disappointing, but of course, this thing has performance aspirations. Now, yes, it is an F Sport, not an F, so this isn't kind of a full-fledged performance vehicle. It's more of a performance light vehicle, but like I talked about earlier, there is this manual mode that I'm going to go ahead and engage for the first time using this button down here. Now, I'm not entirely sold on the noises that it makes in here. It's one of those kind of spaceshipy sort of things. But the cool thing is, well, I don't know about that cool, but it is sort of neat. And when you're heading into a corner, you can, downshift, simulate a downshift. And what that's doing is it's using the regenerative braking. So it's giving you that engine braking feel, and then upshifts are little kind of pulses of electrons from the electric motors. I don't know if I'm as sold on it here as I am in the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, but I will say I appreciate the effort to make the vehicle that much more engaging. So here's my takeaway. This thing is vastly improved. Yes, this is Kaizen. In the sheet metal and glass, it feels very much like continuous improvement. Do I think it's perfect? No. I mean, in terms of ride quality, you can't really get much better. In terms of range, yeah, I would like to see a little bit more, but this is a relatively small battery given the size of this vehicle. Some other competitors, once they get into those 85, 90 kilowatt hour batteries, that's how they crank up the range up into that 500 kilometer territory. But with that front wheel drive version, you can get pretty close. If the pricing stays reasonable, I do see this as a very appealing premium EV, and I'm very happy to see Lexus improving the product over time.